And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. Our next speaker is Julia Bossmann. The talk is called Forecasting, or How I Stopped Worrying About the Future and Started Thinking About the Future. She's the founder of Synthetic Insights, a startup aiming to revolutionize process in early-stage research with the use of artificial intelligence. She has a background in cognitive science, psychology, and neuroscience, and has worked in several research labs in Germany and at USC before she turned to technology and knowledge engineering research and development at Bosch and management consulting and forecasting at McKinsey and Company. She founded Synthetic Insights after being involved in several startups and after completing the graduate studies program at Singularity University for exponential technologies. Besides her startup, Julia serves as the president of Foresight Institute, a leading nonprofit for transformative technologies such as nanotech and artificial intelligence. Please join me and welcome Julia Bossmann.
Hello, everyone. And thanks for coming. Thanks for all the organizers. Amazing event. I'm always so happy to be at Bill and see what, the crowd can achieve. It's fantastic. All right, I'm going to get this closer. Does this work?
Yes, much better.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about the future and forecasting and what's in store for us. We can talk about this for hours and for years, actually, but I want to give you the very short 10-minute brief overview version of how do you think about the future and how do you not think about the future. So let's start with how not to do it and then go into what actually to think of. So here's how not to do it, and I love these kinds of pictures. This is back in the 19th century. We expected, or an artist expected, that in the year 2000 we would all have balloons because the technology at that time that was blowing everyone's mind was the lighter than air travel with balloons. So obviously that would just become more and more a thing in the future. We would also have in the future the transmission of drama and plays and performances to other places, so people who are not in the room can actually see it, which, turned out true. We would also have glass ceilings over cities so that the weather when it rains would not come down. And we would build our houses on train tracks so that they can be moved around. So you can see that some was on point, many was not on point, and what were the actual factors that should be considered. And I'm going to give you just 3 for now. So the first one, markets and politics. So financial interests will accelerate or slow down innovation. And many people who talk about forecasting or who think about science fiction and technology have a technology background or a science background, but not an economics background. So the economics play a big role in it, though. Here's one example. In 1986, there was an incredibly visionary forecast by Eric Drexler, and one of the things he forecasted was that the internet would bring on this massive revolution in how knowledge is shared and worked with, and that all scientific results would be available online immediately to be openly shared and commented on and worked upon and linked on, which is great, and it is technically feasible, but because of the massive financial interest of publishing houses, this has still not come to fruition the way we were promised it would. So there is a big battle going on. Aaron Swartz was the first one who gave publishing houses their Napster moment and lost. And the new one is Sci-Hub with Alexandra Elbakian, who is not backing down, and and there's lots of things. This is actually possible, it's just not happening quite yet. The next thing that we want to think about when we think about change, it's not just technology that is changing and progressing, but society itself is progressing too. So you probably have seen these scenarios of the future where technology has made these massive advances, but everything else stayed the same. The man is still driving the wheel, and the woman is in the pretty dress behind him and stays at home with the kids. And this is not taking into account how society is changing. So today we have way more ways of what people can do, how they can live their lives, how they can relate to each other. And this is becoming more and more prominent in the future too. So I would even predict that in about 5 years' time from now, we would see gender-neutral makeup in convenience stores because the what we can do as humans is, becoming more and more open and getting redefined. And now the last thing that has not been taken into account with these kind of naive past predictions is the wild card. So the things that happened that we cannot predict. And if you think back at the picture, we saw the horse carriage with the balloons on it, but they did not anticipate the horseless carriage. And today, pretty much all of our carriages that we move around in are actually horseless and, driving with a motor. So the way to get around this, lots of things are missing from our predictions just because we lack the imagination to imagine them. And science fiction is filling the gap here where we can, immerse ourselves in stories of people who spend a lot of time thinking about what is possible. And not everything that is possible is going to come to fruition, like I said earlier, but it will extend the range of what we can imagine if we try to expose ourselves to different ideas, and that will also help you become better at anticipating the future. So now, what do we know and what can we know? We have this Venn diagram of what's possible, what's desirable, and what does the market allow. And if it's possible and desirable, it may happen eventually, but if the market is against it, like with open publishing, for example, it will take a much longer time than you would think it would. If the market is for it, it may radically accelerate it. And again, if something is possible and the market is for it, it might happen even if it's not desirable to most of our society. And if it's desirable and the market is for, but it's just not technically possible, it's not going to happen. Another way that we think about the future is that it happens in different layers at different speeds. So nature has a movement and it's moving very, very slowly. Fashion has a very slow movement, so within a year we can see several different trends and developments and so forth. And in between we have these layers that interact with each other and happen at different paces. So, commerce is involved with fashion and infrastructure. Infrastructure and governance are related. Governance and culture interact with each other and so forth. And culture and nature are connected then in the end. And we can identify some very large trends in the culture, governance, infrastructure domain. So two people who talk a lot about this are Steven Pinker on the left. He wrote a book, The Better Angels of Our Nature, which has become very popular in that regard. And Peter Singer, who is famous for the expanding circle of empathy. So what these two people are pointing out is that over history, even over centuries or millennia even, the way we relate to each other has increased in empathy and increased in recognizing other people's personhood, recognizing other people's rights. Violence has gone down overall, so we always see spikes. We also see an increase in talking about things and sharing information, even though the actual trend in the big picture is positive. And here the last one is execution per 100,000 people. There are spikes and up and down, but on the overall it has also gone down. Now, just a few further trends that are overall increasing and overall seem to be the way humanity is headed. One is connection. So when the internet came up, some people said the internet is a fad, nobody wants to talk to people they can't see. But actually it seems that connection to information and connection to each other has so much benefit for people and for the world that it sticks around, and anything that can increase the connection, that can increase the immediacy, will help with that. Related to that, information has increased exponentially throughout human history. You've probably heard these words that we have created more information in the last year than in all of the past century combined. And it's going to increase that way, and there are always drawbacks where people complain about the noise that is created. Actually, in Gutenberg's time, there were essays that said, everyone can publish anything now, and therefore it's the end of society as we know it. And we had that again when the TV came up, when the radio came up, when the internet came up, and we're going to have this conversation, and it's just going to increase. Automation is going to increase too, because even if it goes wrong sometimes, whatever it does is just so much more useful by freeing up labor that it is going to stick around. And which brings us to the last point, which is artificial intelligence. Here is just an animation of an AI trying to recognize what is being drawn on there. And this is also a development that's going to stick around because it is so useful to increase our cognitive capacity that just like the internet, like connection, information, and so forth, it's only going to increase in the future. I'm going to give you 3 quick examples for that. So the first one is creative things in art. So here was a neural network trained on the style of Edward Munch, and then given a picture of me and a friend at Burning Man, and then it drew that in the Munch style of a picture at Burning Man. So now you can create art the way a famous painter would paint it, you know, with your own stuff. Here's another example. Another neural network was given the complete works of Shakespeare and then asked to just create dialogue out of the blue without being given anything else. And when you read it, it kind of reads like Shakespeare. And it doesn't have a big story arc yet, or it doesn't even make sense all of the time. But it is getting there that you can feed it information and it will recognize the pattern and it will be able to recreate the pattern. So next example is about work. So far, lawyers have been a very expensive service. If you needed an attorney, you know, it's basically only available to the people who can afford it. Now there's a bot online, so this one is online in the UK right now and free for anyone to use, who you can interact with, and it will help you draft letters. So this one has a flight delay. It will, you know, draft a complaint letter for you. It will draft letters to fight parking tickets and so forth. And this makes it available to anyone in the world, basically, to have access to legal services. Another work that I'm using right now is called XAI. So this is my virtual assistant Andrew, who is basically just an artificially intelligent algorithm, and it will write emails on my behalf to schedule meetings with people, and we'll go back and forth with them, tell them what time I'm free, and so forth. So it's as if I was having someone who helps me with that. Now the last thing is where AI can become better than humans. So you may have seen the battle of AlphaGo versus Lee Sedol, the reigning champion in Go, and AlphaGo beat him over the course of 5 games. And this was a development that was considered to be 10 years out from now, because Go is such an incredibly complex game which requires human intuition and creativity and ingenuity and all of these things that we thought were innately human that AI could not do anytime soon, and it did. And it was done by an algorithm developed by DeepMind, which is here used in another example where it's playing the game Breakout. And there they first noticed that it does creative things that it wasn't taught to do. So here it will, you know, find a way on the side to break through and then have it going really fast from the backside. So what the AI does is it is confronted with problems, and then it just spends so much time on the problems that it will figure out ways to solve them that we didn't teach it. Which brings us to a problem. Once AI can do everything for us, what are we going to do? And one idea is to propose a universal basic income, and I'm just very quickly going to give a point why this might be a good idea. Because today the only way that people can make a living is by either selling their time with a skill multiplier or by having ownership and renting out stuff that they own. And once machines can do everything, there's no way to sell your time anymore, so ownership is everything that matters. Now, if ownership was distributed in a way that everyone can make a living off that would be fine, but it's not today. So we need to solve this problem. And I would predict that once this problem is solved, we would look back at our time today and think that it was barbaric, that we would force people to spend most of their conscious lifetime doing things they didn't want to do just to be allowed to survive. And then lastly, I want to end with one example for AI and with an optimistic note of what it can do. that goes beyond what humans can do, kind of related to the problem-solving one. So we are battling many diseases today, cancer, Alzheimer, and so forth. Only just cancer has a $5 billion research budget that is spent on it every year. And there's so many entries in scientific journals and databases that we can, whoa. Okay, it's restarting. There's so many database entries that it has become impossible for anyone. Okay, I'm just going to give it without slides. to figure out what is actually going on, because a scientist, in order to understand the whole field, they would need to read one paper every minute, every hour of every day. And this pace is still accelerating. As I said, information is still increasing exponentially. So nobody can do that. But a machine can do, because we are not limited in memory, we're not limited in reading speed, we're not limited in the number of connections that a machine can make between results that it has extracted. So we can put all of these together. And the hope behind it is that we can then make progress that has been impossible for humanity to make, because let's face it, all of our brains have limits in the way we can think and memorize and process information and collaborate with others. So yeah, the hope is that we are entering an age where we can solve problems that humanity so far collectively has not been smart enough to solve. That is what I'm working on with my company Synthetic, especially in solving these problems in research. And what I'm working with the nonprofit Foresight Institute, which is dedicated to making sure that these developments happen in a beneficial way so that all of society will benefit from that. Thank you. Okay. Do we have time for questions? And I can try to, open it up again. Yeah. Yes, I can hear you. Yes, that's a very good question. So the question was, is it dangerous to build these kinds of AI? And I would say yes, there are dangers to it. And that's also why Foresight is committed to making sure that they happen in a beneficial way. There are many ways we can think of these things going wrong. One is if they're in the wrong hands for people who use them for stuff that is not beneficial to society. Another one is if we just let the AI run with it and put it in charge of things that are important to us and don't keep, tight control on what is actually going on and what is happening and what are the bounds of the control that it has. So there are initiatives, and luckily this is being discussed a lot in the community of artificial intelligence. How do we steer this in a way that is positive? And in that way, it is similar to other developments like biotechnology, for example, which had the Asilomar conference back in the 90s to ensure, there are certain things that shouldn't be done, like working with pathogens, and there are certain things that should be done. So this discussion is happening right now.
Yeah, your slide on the universal basic income, amazing, fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
You're in a technology field. This is a highly politicized, almost goes against every single in the American thought process. Every politician from the right to the left is concerned about jobs and working. Until that dialogue changes, what kind of improvement, what kind of effort do you have in this political arena?
Yes, great question. So the question was about the universal basic income and what we are doing to address that, because it's a political and economics problem and not so much a technical problem. One thing I did was I was in Davos at the meeting of the World Economic Forum earlier this year. And, I was trying to bring this discussion into the forum and the positive news was that it is something that is now coming on the radar of world leaders and policymakers in high positions of power. So the theme of Davos this year was the fourth industrial revolution, where there was a lot about unemployment and so forth. And right now the discussion still is a lot about how do we make sure everyone has jobs. And it takes an overcoming of the friction to go from that to the thought of maybe they're just, maybe it's a good thing that work can be done in a way that we don't need humans to do it. And yeah, it's getting there, and we're involved with that. Thanks.
We are sadly over time.
All right.
We'll be around to take questions afterwards.
Yeah, let's meet afterwards for questions. And thank you, everyone.